Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We are joined by Dmitry Grozubinski, former diplomat and trade negotiator with the Australian Permanent Mission to the World Trade Organization, founder of explaintrade.com. Music to my ears. Good afternoon to you, Dmitry.
Good afternoon, Sheila. It's good to be with you.
You too. Article 24, is this Article 24 of the Lisbon Treaty that people are talking about when they ring and talk about Article 24?
No, Sheila. It's Article 24 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which was the agreement that was kind of the foundational part that then turned into the WTO.
So GATT became WTO,
WTO. Yes, that's right.
Right. So what does it say in relation to how can it be applied to Brexit, in your view?
In my view, it really can't. And sort of watching this as someone with a bit of experience in trade, for me, it's a really frustrating conversation because every minute we spend talking about it, we're not talking about how to manage the realities of Brexit and the various scenarios. So just to put it as concisely and simply as I can, what people are talking about when they talk about Article 24 is a provision that says ordinarily all WTO members have to treat one another the same way. So if you have a 10% tariff on beef with Australia, you have to provide that same tariff access to all other WTO members. But the WTO, knowing that countries would want to go further, allowed for the possibility of free trade agreements and customs unions. And Article 24 allows that. So basically, you can come to the WTO and say, look, England and the EU have done a very comprehensive free trade agreement, and we will now charge each other lower tariffs. So that's why it's there.
Hang on. We will now charge each other lower tariffs than with all of the other WTO members.
Then we charge other WTO members, okay. Exactly. And you're allowed to do that if you have a proper, comprehensive free trade agreement that covers substantially all trade, which I want to be very clear that there is no such draft agreement for after Brexit. No. What some people have argued is that there is a clause in there that says if you haven't quite finished an agreement or you're not quite ready to implement an FTA, but you've basically finished it and you've got a plan for how you're going to do it, you can come to the WTO membership and say, listen, WTO membership, we've got this plan, we've got this agreement, it'll come into force in a couple of years, in up to 10 years. Here's what it will look like, and here's our kind of schedule of how we're going to get there. And along the way, we're going to cut tariffs between ourselves in accordance with this plan. Are you, the WTO membership, okay with this? Do you accept that we're creating a comprehensive free trade agreement? Will you let us have an exception to this rule I was talking about that says we have to charge everyone the same way during this interim period when we've got basically a completed free trade agreement, we've got a schedule to how to implement it, but we don't yet actually have it completely done and implemented?
They would say no, would they? They would say no.
Well, this is the problem. So any WTO member has the right to offer what in the text basically says recommendations. And if the two countries don't take those recommendations on board, they can't proceed with that interim arrangement and be in compliance with WTO.
And those recommendations, well, hang on, those recommendations would be around tariff levels, would they?
Well, they would have to be trade relevant, really, but they can be almost whatever it wants. Mm-hmm. But in essence, what this means is that any WTO member could effectively block this approach. Mm-hmm. But that's not really the biggest problem with this entire argument. The issue with this is that it's not something that the UK can do unilaterally. If the UK and EU both came to the WTO membership and said they wanted to do this, it still probably wouldn't work, but that's the absolute bare requirement, that the UK and EU both agree to do this, both have a concrete plan for what they're going to do and have a schedule for it that they present to the membership.
And
this is somehow...
Okay, can I ask you, when some of our callers say, of course the EU don't want us to know about Article 24 and they see some kind of suspicious element to that, you say what? Do you say that there's no point engaging with Article 24 on this at this point because we're not even discussing a free trade agreement yet? We're still just discussing our exit, our divorce.
Well, so if the UK and EU agree, say, a transition period, like under the Prime Minister's WA, then they probably don't even need to touch Article 24. They would just keep things the same way. That's what the transition period is. So Article 24 is not relevant to that. If, however, the UK and EU can't agree on a deal, Article 24 is also irrelevant because it, by definition, needs both the UK and the EU to agree. So this is why I think it's a bit of a circular argument. You either have some kind of withdrawal agreement and a transition period that keeps things the same for the next little while and allows businesses to adjust, allows the customs borders to be put in place.
Or you have a deal.
Allows all of these things, or you don't, in which case Article 24 is irrelevant because the EU won't join with the UK to approach it because there's no deal.
Okay. Dimitri, thank you. Certainly I can say that's cleared it up. I hope people listening feel that that's been cleared up for them as well. On Article 24, Dimitri Grozubinski, former diplomat and trade negotiator